Okay, all right, and our broadcast has begun. Welcome everyone to Lambda School's mini bootcamp lesson number 4. Tonight we are going to be going over JavaScript objects and going over homework from last night's lesson. So if you're just tuning in, this is your first time seeing us. Anyway, if you haven't signed up for the mini bootcamp yet, be sure to go to our website and sign up, because then you can get added to our Slack team where there's people discussing the different things that we go over, and you can ask and answer questions. Anyway, there's some resources in there that you can reference. That's where we post links to things, and we have some TAs and people in there helping out. So make sure that you do that. Fun stuff. We're going to start we'll begin class by working over some solutions to a few of the problems from yesterday's homework. So specifically, some people were asking about is prime and some other ones. Lambda School is, this is a free service we're volunteering and providing. We're an online coding bootcamp. One of the main things we do is we're free until our students are employed as full-time software engineers. We teach full stack software engineering and computer science fundamentals in a live online 6-month-long course. So if you're interested in learning more about our course, feel free to ask any questions or message me or Austin. Also, you can head to our website. And doing our February class particularly, then let us know, and we can expedite you through the interview process if you're doing the mini bootcamp. This mini bootcamp covers the pre-course requirements and gives you a foundation in the fundamentals of JavaScript programming, as well as HTML, CSS, Git and GitHub version control, as well as some DOM API stuff, which is what you'll find out about. Find out what that means next week. Okay, so let's jump in and get started. All right. Okay, homework number 2. Let's pull it up real quick. All right. Okay, so I have a bunch of functions in here that we need to just based off of the instructions return some type of an output, and then based off the input, we'll follow the instructions, do some work, and then return some type of a value. And then these functions are all being tested behind the scenes. We have some files that run some automatic tests against these. So yesterday we talked about arrays. We talked about some different types of logic regarding like if statements and how to do some more complex things there. We also talked about for loops, and so we'll be going through and reviewing that right now. Okay, so x and y are integers. Return the largest integer. So if they are the same, return either one. So what we can do here is we'll say if x is greater than y, return x. So we could write this as else return y. Okay. This will solve it. Again, there's many different ways you could write this. So this problem in particular, I'll show you a couple different ways that we could write this problem, just because you all probably arrived at some specific. You all probably solved this slightly differently, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes there's better solutions than others, but it's for right now it's fine to solve it in many of these other ways. So you could write it as if x is greater than y, return x, and return y. This is all highlighted in red because this code will be actually unreachable if this is left in. So if I comment that out, then it will go away. But so you could write it as something like this. This is kind of a little bit of a a simplified if statement. You could do something with what's called a ternary operator. But anyway, that's for more kind of an advanced use case. But let's we'll just stick with this first one. Okay, so let's now go down here. So greeting. So if language, so based off of what language is, we'll return specific output. So if it's German, so if language is equal to German, return else if language equals again, there's multiple ways you could simplify this. But we'll just write this out. Yes, then we'll do else if language equals Spanish, return hola, else return hello. Yeah, so this so essentially, so if the language variable is equal to the string German, then we return this. If it's equal to English, we return this. If it's equal to Spanish, we return this. In other cases, so if some other, if it's undefined, then we will return hello. Yes, that'll be the default. Okay. So again, the main point here, what we're looking at is just this getting practice with if and else if and else if and else. And there's things called switch statements that you could use for when you have a long series of else ifs. So for those of you that have looked at other programming languages, you could use a switch statement here. You could also say that maybe this if block is redundant because we're returning hello by default, so you could remove that, and you could. So anyway, some different things you could change, but this is for right now we'll leave it like this. Okay, so the else ifs, that's the main thing with this one. Okay, is 10 or 5? So return true if number is 10 or 5. So what we can say here is we can just go return num is equal to 10 or num is equal to 5. Okay, so again, this is the or operator. So if this is true, the entire statement will evaluate the true. Or if this one is true, the entire statement will evaluate the true. So if the number is 5, then this part will be false, and then we'll check here, and then 5 is equal to 5, so the whole thing will become true. So again, this is kind of a review from yesterday with the OR operator. So I'm going to move a little fast. If you have more specific questions about this, then go and reference the video from yesterday. Okay, is in range. So return true if num is less than 50 or greater than 20. Return num is less than 50 or num is greater than, or I'm sorry, if num is less than and greater than. So if num is less than 20 and num is greater than 20, or num is less than 50 and num is greater than 20. So both of these will have to be true. So the number 90, well, okay, so the number 1 part, but it would fail the second part. And so the entire thing would be false. So again, with the double ampersands, the and operator, both sides have to evaluate to true independently. With the or operator, only one of the sides has to be true. Is integers, return true if number is an integer. Hint, you can solve this using math.floor. So again, so there's a little bit of a trick here. So what we can do here is we're going to say return num equal to math.floor num. Okay. So what the floor does, if you remember this from a few, days ago, if number is 5, so what math.floor does is it rounds it down. So the number 5.9 would be rounded down to the number 5 with math.floor. So what we're doing here is we're saying, all right, is num equal to itself after being rounded down? And so if it's a 5, we'll round it down and it'll still be 5 and they'll be equal. So we know it's an integer. But if the number is 5.9, then we're going to round it down and it'll be 5 and those won't be equal. And so anyway, that's why it won't work. So that's how you can spot if it's a spot if it's an integer. All right, fizzbuzz. Okay, this is actually a super common interview question. We had a grad recently, and this was actually the hardest question, technical question he was asked in several of his interviews. So it depends on the company. Most don't ask this anymore, but some still do apparently. The main trick with this question, and sometimes you hear this crazy stat that like a significant number of people with computer science degrees, like that go and interview for programming jobs, can't pass this question, like an alarmingly high amount. And the reason for that is that it's more of it's a test of the modulo operator and making sure that you know how to find a remainder. That's the trick to this problem. So first thing we check for is if num is divisible by 3 and 5, return fizzbuzz. So if num modulo 3 equals 0 and num modulo 5 equals 0, turn fizzbuzz. Okay. And again, different ways you could write this. Else if num modulo 3 equals 0, turn fizz. Sometimes people will like do some string concatenation stuff in here. You can do that too. Also if num modulo 5 equals 0, turn fuzz, else turn num. Okay, so this right here. First, we're going to check to see if the number is divisible by 3 and 5. So again, if you remember this review from yesterday, we're going to divide the number by 3, see if there's a remainder. That's how we tell if it's divisible by it. So the number 15, that would divide evenly into by like 3 and 5 both divide evenly into it. And so then we would return fizzbuzz. For the number 3, we would anyway, so if the number is divisible by 3, then we return fizz. If it's divisible by 5, we return buzz. And then if it's not divisible by 3 or 5, then we return num. Okay. Yeah, the reason I do fizzbuzz up on the top is that first we want to check to see if it satisfies both. Because if it's both, we want to do fizzbuzz. And so you can also kind of simplify this with like some string concatenation stuff where you check to see like if it's divisible by 3, then add fizz onto it. If it's divisible by 5, then add buzz onto it. But this way is pretty straightforward. Right, is prime. Okay, so this is one that gave a lot of people some headaches. So there's some hints in here. So 0 and 1 are not prime numbers. They're not prime. You can solve this with a for loop. A prime number is only divisible by itself and 1. So there shouldn't be a remainder by any other number. Otherwise, return false. So this one can be pretty tricky. But the way we're going to do it is we're going to get a number, and then we're just going to, so if I get the number, 1001, we're going to divide it by every single number between 2 and 1000. So we're going to divide it by 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 all the way up to 1000 and see if any of those numbers divide evenly into it. And that's how we can tell if it's a prime number. So anyways, that's how we can detect if it's prime. There's ways to optimize this and and improve the flow speed-wise, and that's often a follow-on question. This is a somewhat common interview question, actually. I was actually asked this in more of a mid-level type of an engineering question. Like it's a pretty straightforward one. If you're given the hints, that helps a lot. If you get asked this cold and have to write it on a whiteboard without any hints, it can be pretty challenging. So this one's a hard one. This one's hard from this assignment. So if you struggled on this one, don't feel bad, because this is a harder one of the easier questions that, gets thrown out to, will often be used as a warm up, for harder interviews for more senior positions and stuff like that. So, yeah. Let's go through and do this with a loop. So, okay, so the first thing we're going to do, and again, have multiple ways that you could do this, but The first thing we got to do here is we're going to check to make sure that um, if the number is 1 or 0, then we need to return false. So um, someone's asking about solving this with a square root. Yeah, square root is one of the ways to optimize it. And that actually ties into a thing called the sieve of Eratosthenes. Or Eratosthenes. There we go. That's how you say it. Sieve of Eratosthenes is how you pronounce it. Anyway, that's getting into a little more more of an advanced like segue, but so you can go check that out if you're curious. Otherwise, like, don't worry about it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say if num is equal to 1 or num is equal to 0, return false. Okay, so we'll have that statement up here first. Now we're going to do our for loop. So now with our for loop, we need to find, we need to check all the other numbers and see if any numbers divide evenly into num. So we've already checked for 0 and 1. We're going to have I just start at 2. Let's do I is less than num. So as long as I is less than num, so I was going to start at 2, and as long as it's less than num, then we're going to keep iterating. We're just going to increase by 1. Another thing that you could do, that's complaining because that's empty. So let's, what we'll do here now is we will, now we have to check to see if num is divisible by I. So if num modulo I equals 0, true or false. So if we ever find a number that divides evenly into num, then we will return false. And so again, the return will cause the entire function to stop. It'll cause the for loop to stop. The entire function will quit, and it will return false. All right, so essentially what we're going to do, the flow here is we're just going to go along, and if we ever find a number that divides evenly into it, we return false. And if we reach the end of our function and we haven't found a single number that would make it fail, then we're going to return true and say, all right, it is a prime number. So for example, if the number was 7, if num is 7, we'd come down. So if num is 7, we'll come down. All right, is num 1 or is it 0? No. So we skip the if statement, come down here. Okay, I is 2, and then, all right, 2 less than 7, that's true. Let's go through. So, all right, so 7 divided by 2, that is a remainder of 1. So we skip the if statement, we don't run it. We increment I. So then I becomes 3, so we come back up. All right, is 3 less than 7? That's true. So we come down in. All right, 7 divided by 3. Okay, that leaves us with a remainder of 1 still. So we skip the if statement, come back up. 4, 4 is still less than 7. So we come in. All right, okay, 7 divided by 4. That doesn't leave a 0 remainder. So we skip that, come back up. Bring it to 5. 5 is still less than 7. We come back down in. We divide. We don't get an even remainder. We come back up. 6. Go back through. Same story. And then we get to 7. And then at this point, is 7 less than 7? 7 is not less than 7. It's equal to 7. So the for loop breaks. And then we come down here and we hit the return true, and the function returns true. So 7 is a prime number. If the number 4 was passed in, again, we'd come down. 4 is not equal to 1. It's not equal to 0, so we skip that. We come down here. All right, I is equal to 2. I less than 4. So, all right, so it's 2 less than 4. It is. So now we're going to come down. All right, 4 divided by 2. Does that have an even remainder? It does. Like, so that the remainder is 0. And so then we come down, and then we hit return false. And then the function will exit and return false. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. Okay, so let's. Okay. Oh yeah. So let's see. So someone's asking about 2. So if 2 were to come in, so 2 would pass this. We'd come down. I is equal to 2. Um, uh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that would actually not pass this one. We would have to check for 2 as well. Good catch. Usually what you're going to do is you're going to check to see if num is 2 up above. And then what you'll do is you'll actually increment the I by 3. So you skip all the even numbers. Because if it's, anyway, here you would check to see if the number was even up here. But yeah, you're right. Good catch. All right, so let's go down and look at return first. So return the first item from the array. So we use 0 to access it. So we're going to return the first item like that. The last. So array.length will give us the count or the number of items that are in the array. So we're going to do array and then array.length -1. And so this will always give us the final item in the array. Yeah. Okay, so this will always give us the last item. And then get array length, return array.length. All right, increment by 1. So array is an array of integers. Increase each integer by 1. Return the array. So we're going to loop over the array. I will start at 0, and then I is less than array.length I plus plus. So this right here again, I starts at 0, and then while I is less than the count of all the items in the array, we're going to be moving up, and then I plus plus. And so what we're going to do here is array at index I will be equal to array at index I plus 1. So then we reassign in a number still assign a number, and it goes in. Let's see, someone's saying there's a little bit of a delay with the recording, so people are saying that the is prime. Let's see. Oh yeah, 2 is prime. Let's see. So, well, actually, wait, let me think about this. 0, 1 are not considered prime numbers. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So what we'll want to do here, let's see. Yeah, let me think how I want to adjust it. I mean, the simple thing right now, just for the sake of time, is you could just say if num is equal to 2, true, because that's just the one edge case. But there's a more graceful way that you could go through and figure that out. Because again, generally, for solving this, there's a couple different optimizations that you could make if you're doing this in an interview. But like having it like skip prime numbers and stuff like that. But anyway, that's just another edge case we could include up at the top. All right, add item to array. So we're going to do array.push item, and then an array, and add item to the front. So array.unshift item, an array. All right, words to a sentence. So an array of strings, and then return a string that has all the words concatenated together. Spaces need to be between each word. Okay. So what we can do is let sentence, we'll set it equal to an empty string, and then we'll iterate over the array. And then we'll do sentence plus equals the word. So then we just add the word on. so this will add it on, and then now we have to account for the space between each word. And so what we want to do is um, check to see. What we'll do is we'll say, and again, different ways you could solve this, but we'll say if I plus 1 is equal to words dot length. Actually, I'll say it is not equal. And we'll do sentence plus equals word size. So essentially, we're going to say, okay. Okay. So then what we can do here is, so we'll add the space on if we're not at the last. So again, we iterate over the array, and then we're going to be adding on the words along with spaces onto the end. And then, so this is how you do it. So there's actually a shortcut. So you can actually just do words.join like this. And then this will actually join all the different strings together in the array. We didn't talk about join yesterday, so some of you may not have done that. Maybe you found it with Google. But this is how if you were to do it manually, you'd write it out something like this. But then this would be a more ideal solution. So words.join, it concatenates, it brings all the items in the array together into a single string, but then it separates them by the character that you specify. So I'm specifying a space. So words.join. All right. Contains, so check to see if an item is inside of array. Return true if it is, otherwise return false. So there's a method on an array called includes. So we can return array dot includes item. So this is a newer method in the more recent versions of JavaScript. There are other ways that, again, or you could just do a for loop and loop over the array and then manually check to see if the item is in it. So again, for let I get 0, I less than length. And then what we'll do is if array index I is equal to item, then return true. Otherwise, if we make it all the way through the array and we don't find an item that matches, then we return false at the end. Yeah. Okay. So again, you can do it with includes or with a for loop. And all right, so with add numbers, numbers is an array of integers. Add all the integers and return the value. So again, with most of these problems, I'm solving them in a more basic way, and there's often ways to for more advanced student, you could use a reduce here. You could use an array.reduce, which is a method on arrays, but I'm going to write it out manually. So for let I get 0, I less than numbers dot length, I plus, and we're going to say sum plus equals in the array. We just start at 0, and as we go along, we just we add on the item that's in the array. So again, this is a very, very common line that you'll be writing. So I is 0, I less than the length of the array, I plus plus. This is a very common thing that you'll be writing. Okay. All right, average test score. So we're going to we have to add up all of the items in the array, and then divide it by the length. And so what I can do here is I'll just use our function that we wrote up above. So add numbers, test scores, oops, divided by test scores dot. So this is me just using the function that we just wrote. So as long as that works, then it will work. All right, largest number. Numbers is an array of integers. Return the largest integer. So let I'm going over here. I need to pick up my pace a little bit, but this is good stuff to review. So we'll say let largest is equal to numbers in index 0. So I'll say the first item from the array is going to be the current largest number, and then set I is equal to 1 this time, less than numbers dot length plus plus. Again, for a more advanced student, you could use array.reduce here. Use the reduce method. This would be a great candidate for that. And then what we'll do is we'll say if numbers at index I is greater than largest, then we'll set largest equal to the new item, and then we will return largest like that. Okay. So again, this will allow us to cycle through the entire array, check to see if there's yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, this will probably be the last time I'll work through every single problem, just for the sake of time. But anyway, it's good stuff to go over tonight. All right, let's do. Just make you more prepared, help you learn this stuff better. So let's run tests, see if I have any typos. Let's see, npm run test JS2. Okay, so I have one that's off a little bit. So this is a good chance for us to get in and figure out how to look at these error messages and how to better understand them. So, so I have one failed. So come up and it says increment by 1, should return the array with each value incremented by 1. So here it's going to say it expected the value to equal the array of 11, 11, 17, 13, but what it received was undefined. So it means it didn't get anything back. What that means is I probably just forgot to return the array inside of the function. So let's go look at increment by 1. And yep, I just gotta turn the array. And then run the tests again. And now they're all passing. Okay. All right, so let's now dive into the next assignment. Okay, so the thing we're going to talk about today, we're going to go over objects. The next assignment. I accidentally went to the wrong tab. Okay. All right, pulling up my lesson plan. Okay, let me. Oh, okay. All right, so let's walk through objects. So in JavaScript, again, we've talked about variables where, well, we have arrays that have a, you can just put a bunch of stuff in them. The order is important. They have an index to them, and so it's a collection. It's like a bag of things. We also have there's another key data structure that we use in JavaScript in addition to arrays is it's called an object. And so an object, we use the curly braces instead of the square brackets. And an object has the key idea behind an object is it has key value pairs. So often objects are used to group together pieces of data of different types under the same umbrella. So what we could do here is I'll say, so like user, we'll say like email is asdf@asdf.com. And so right here is an object, we're calling it user, and it has an email property. And so we just type it out. We don't put it in quotes. It actually gets saved as a string, but we don't have to wrap it in quotes here. And then we put a colon. And so this is the key, and then this is the value associated with that key. And so this right here is just a string I'm writing in line. And then if I want to add more keys onto the object, then I put a comma, and then we head down to the next line. So email, and then password, something like that. So so we see here just that the key, we have the key on the left, we put a colon, and then on the right we have a value. These are both strings. Let's put a Boolean on it. We could say is admin true. So you can have Boolean values. You can put anything on the object that you want. The keys have to be unique. I tried to put another email on there. We see it's giving me a little warning here. It says duplicate key email. This will actually, this used to be a silent error, like it wouldn't throw an error, but then this is clearly a bug because this is going to just overwrite this one. So why would we want to do that? And so, when you're using stricter versions of the language, it will throw an error here. So they have to be unique. There can only be like one key of email on this object. You cannot have multiple email like that match. Like the keys all have to be exactly identical. That's case sensitive. Okay, so email password is admin. If this is for like a social media thing, we could say like we have a friends array. Then so you can put an array on the object. You could have objects on objects. So we could have here's location, and so we could have something like time zone, or whatever the format is for time zones, and then you could do something like address, or sorry, I was thinking ahead. So you can see how you could have nested objects. So you can have an object on the object, and they're all key value pairs. So the value can be any of the things that we've worked with. It can be an array. It can be another object. It can be a bool. It can be a string. It could be an age. Or number is. It could be a number. Any type of a value can be stuck on the right side, and it's pretty loose about it. They're pretty flexible with objects. Objects are one of the most commonly used things in JavaScript. Everything is built off of objects. As a little side note for students who are a little more advanced, coming with a stronger coding background, everything in JavaScript is an object. Arrays are actually technically objects. Functions are objects. There are no classes in JavaScript technically. But anyway, people are asking about the last comma. So this is trailing comma. Some people use them, some people don't. You don't strictly need it. So it works without it. I like using trailing commas because it makes it easier if I'm adding or deleting lines. I don't have to go hunt down commas and make sure they're all lined up. So I use trailing commas. So some companies do, some companies don't. So it will not create a syntax error. Okay, so people are asking, in this nested object, can you have a repeat of these up here? You can. You probably wouldn't, but I could do that. Or if it's different or whatever. So we can have a repeat on here. It has to be unique to the specific object that it's on. So these are two different objects, but then they're connected together right here. Okay, good question. All right. So this leads. Okay, it leads into okay. So another thing too. So to access these properties. So if we wanted to print out the user's age, we would do user.age. Okay. So the dot is how we reference the property. So user.age. If we wanted to do isAdmin, we do user.isAdmin. That prints out. If we want to do the time zone, we have to do user.location, and then location is an object, so we have to do dot time zone. Then we see the time zone for now. So it's address. So it's so this is how we access the properties off of the object. So the object again is a way of grouping together a bunch of different types of values under the same entity. Okay. All right. If we wanted to change it, so user.age, I could do something like user.age is equal to 20. Or user age plus plus, like they grew older. Now we see 16 gets printed out. Okay, so then you can just go in and modify the property. We call these properties. It's a key value pair. The keys on the object, you can also refer to them as properties. Okay, super common type of a thing that you're working with in JavaScript is when you have arrays of objects. So we have this user object. I'm going to simplify this right now. So I have email, password, const user2, email. A really common type of a thing where you'll have arrays of objects. You're doing that, using that all the time. So I have our array of users, and then we have the different user objects inside of it. Okay, people are asking about inheritance. You would set that up with classes, and that's something we talk about another time. That's but yeah, that's a lot of those object-oriented designs. Those features are available. Okay, so I print out users. Oops. See again. User one is not defined because I called it user. All right, so you see the array of 2 objects. If I wanted to just print out the second one, I would do users of 1. And we see the second one prints out. Okay, so another thing I want to talk about real quick too is you can use bracket notation to, there's 2 different ways you can access the properties. So we can do console.log user1.email, and we can also do console.log user1 email. So we see that those both accessed it. So here, the brackets, if I use the brackets, it's expecting to get either a string or a number in here. And then it will, or whatever we put in here will be converted into a string. And then it's going to look for that property on the object. The main use case for this is if you had a variable referring to a key. So const key is email. And then I can put the key in here. And then what it's going to do is the program, it will substitute the key variable here for the string, or the string will substitute that for the key, and then it will access the email. So if I print this again, run this again, we see that the email prints out twice. So so this is the type of a use case. And so you might think, why would I write a variable like this and pass it in? This would be like if it was a property for a function, or if we were doing iteration over an object, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit for a different type of role. Okay. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next key aspect of objects. I want to talk about. So we have a bunch of different properties we can put on the object. We can also put functions on objects. So we can put a function on the object. So I come down here and I can say user, and I still use the dot notation, and then I just use the parentheses to invoke it, invoke the function. We run that, and we see hi prints out. Okay, if I wanted to pass it an argument, message, print it out. A message like that. So the string, again, is what the message parameter will refer to, and then we pass that to the console.log. We print it out, and we see ni hao. So yeah, so it's just the function behaves exactly the same way. The only part that's different is we just have this user dot part where it's chained off of the object. Everything else behaves exactly the same. This is the same as all the function stuff we covered before. This is all the same as the function stuff we covered before. It's just this part that is different today. It's just where we're putting the function. The function lives on the object. Okay. All right. Okay, so this a function on an object will we call that a method. In other languages, a method and function have a stricter like separate definitions, but here in JavaScript, generally we refer to whenever you put a function on an object, we call it a method. So it's just a function on the object. We just have a different name for it. So we call it a method when it's attached to an object. Okay. So now let's say that this function that's on the object, we want to reference one of these properties. So we'll call this print email. Okay. So the way that we can do this, the way that we access the properties that are on the object are it's through this keyword that gets set in the function, and it's called this. So this is this keyword. This is something that we go into this quite a bit in depth in our course. But this is something we're just going to touch on it a little bit today. This is something that leads into a much more advanced area. But for right now, just the basics of this. When we have a function on an object, if we want to reference the object that the function is attached to, then we use the this keyword. And so what we can do here is we can say console.log this.email. And now if I run user.print email, I invoke this function, we run it and we see that the email is printed out. So again, we invoke the print email function. This right here is a variable that gets set automatically. It automatically gets set to this object. So this right here refers to the entire object that the function is on. And so then I can go this.email and I can reference the email. Okay, so this is it's like a variable where it gets automatically set and the context changes. So so then the idea is that so let's say like this user object, I'm going to copy it. So let's say we had an array of users. Paste that in here. Okay. So again, this is getting a little more advanced with some of the syntax. But so here, just the way to look at this, we have an array that has two objects written inside of it, and then we have the two each have a print email function on them. And so this one, we'll call this one foo@foo.com. Okay. So now what we can do is we can say users at index 0 dot print email, and we invoke it. We run that, and we see the email prints out. If I do users at index 1, which will reference this object, and then I can do dot print email on that one, you see the two different emails are printed out. So again, so this is combining. This might be like kind of trippy at first, like, well, what's going on? we are combining the syntax of accessing something out of an array, which is then an object, and then we call a print email function off of that. Okay. Yeah, like that. All right. Okay, and so you see here how that we use it. When we use this inside of this function, this refers to the first object. When we use it in the second function, the this keyword refers to the second object. And so the context changes. And so this can be kind of trippy, and there's a bunch of other different cool things we can do with it. And this is just kind of the first introduction to it. But anyway, there's a lot of fun stuff we can do with this keyword going forward. Okay. All right. So these are the basics. I have two more little things I want to cover with objects. So the first one, let's go back to our user example. Or let's I'll call this animal. Very scientific name of dog. All right. So now let's see. Let's see that maybe like we used to say like how old or something, but we want to change it to be age instead of how old. And so we're wanting to like modify it. We just want to get rid of this property because it's redundant. It's having the same value, and we think that age is more appropriate or a better way to say it. And so we want to delete the property off of it. There's a delete keyword. So this will remove the property from the object. Okay, so if I run that, you see first time it prints, there's Fido, dog, 5 and 5, but then we delete the property there, and so then we just see name Fido, species dog, age 5, and it's gone. We don't do this very much. Usually you're not doing this, but it's good to know that it exists. This is a thing. Okay. So delete. All right, and something to look at too is if you look at console.log, what we're doing here is console is an object, and log is a method on the console object. And then we pass it in an argument, and then behind the scenes, it's logging stuff to the output. So console is a global object that's available everywhere we're at in our code. So anyway, that's what we're doing here. Console.log, referencing a method on an object. Okay, all right, final thing. Let's do const food. Here's a food object. Cucumber type vegetable. All right, so we'll say this is like inventory for a store or something like that. And so one of the food items that we have is a cucumber, and anyway, maybe you'd have like location would be like J45 or something, like the aisle that it's on, or the place or the area in the produce section it's in or something. So obviously this is a very, very like big simplification, but but those are the types of things you're building with objects. Like you're using objects everywhere to model real world things. So what we can do here is we can loop over the object, just like we can loop over arrays. We can loop over the object. We do it a little bit differently. Then we don't use a for loop. We use what's called a for in loop. And so do for let key in food, and I'll walk you through this in just a moment. So it's similar to a for loop, but we are going to access all the keys in food. And so if I console.log key, so let's log out all the keys. You see name, type, count, location. All right, let's say that name, type, count, location. If I wanted to log out all the properties, or the values, I mean, then I'm going to do food bracket key like this. Key is a variable that will be substituted in for So the first time this goes through, key will be cucumber, so it'll be, or sorry, key will be name, so it's going to print out food.name, then food.type, food.count, food.location. So we see name cucumber, type vegetable, count 55, location J45. So we see that all print out. A common mistake that we'll see, people will try to do food.key, like they want to do food.key. Can anyone tell me why food.key will not work? Well, there's actually a little bit of a yeah, actually there's probably too much of a delay for me to really do questions like this with a live stream like that. But what this is going to do is that key, when it's this is literally going to look for a key on the object called key. Like it's literally looking for one called key. There is no property on the object called key. There's name, type, count, location. There is not one called key. So this right here will be undefined. So we'll see name cucumber undefined, type vegetable undefined, count 55 undefined, location J45 undefined. And so key is not a key. So you have to use the brackets because you don't want food.key. You want the value of key. And so the first iteration of the loop, key is going to be name, the string name. Then it's going to be the string type, then the string count, then the string location. Okay. All right, so that kind of trips people up. It's just kind of the bracket notation versus dot notation. Some people ask, when do you use which one? Generally speaking, always use dot notation unless you can't. So if I wanted to get a value inside of a foreign loop like this is a situation where I can't use dot notation. I have to use bracket notation. But most of the time, you're just using dot notation. Again, dot notation is going food.name. This right here is dot notation. So generally, we're doing this. This is how you're accessing properties and methods. So default to this behavior. If you can't, then use it this way. So 99% of the time, you're doing it this way. In our homework tonight, you'll need to be able to use both. Okay. All right. So again, on objects, these different keys. Yeah. So again, high level on object is just a bunch of key value pairs. And generally, yeah, you're going to know the exact key that you're wanting to access beforehand. Okay, fun stuff. So objects are a huge, huge part of JavaScript. And getting comfortable and familiar with this syntax is so much of what you have to do as a programmer. So it's a lot of fun. Okay. Yeah. So object, just key value pairs. The key has to be unique. So often used to model parts of your application. So yeah, it's like a user, or on Facebook, you would have objects for images that would have data for what the image looks like, and its size, and URL for where it's stored. And if you go and make a post on Facebook, your post will be an object that will have something like text, and then the user ID of the person who liked it, and then it would have information about all the users who have gone in and liked your post, and information about the user that made the post, and so it's just lots and lots of different objects. It's like these are the building blocks that you build your applications with. Okay. All right, fun stuff. So with the homework, again, you just go into the next folder, work through the problems. We'll be around to help. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions. We'll be watching the Slack channel for a bit. And yeah, if you have any questions about Lambda School in general, then again, feel free to let us know. It's a lot of fun. We teach full stack programming, so databases and servers, security, front end web application development. We go over computer science fundamentals, so data structures, algorithms, operating systems, C, all that good stuff. So anyway, it's a lot of fun, and it's online, live. We don't do stuff like a MOOC, a massively open online course. Pre-recorded content that's self-paced has super, super, super low graduation rates. People just don't complete stuff when it's go at your own pace, self-paced. So that's why we take attendance. It's structured. We give assessments. It's very much like being in a college class or that live environment. And so it's humans generally kind of default towards some like procrastination and laziness a little bit. And so so we provide as structured of an environment as possible because that helps people really make the most of their time. So fun stuff. Thanks everyone for being here, and I will see you around and see you tomorrow.